One of the first skills we are going to work on now that we know what to call everything is we're going to work on writing verbal expressions. So we're going to look at symbolic representations of math expressions, and we're going to write them in words, all right? And I have full disclaimer, I have just absolutely terrible handwriting, so I will try to be good while we're doing this. All right, so this first thing we have here, this is a term, and it's 2x to the third power is one way of saying it. So we want to be able to write this as an expression so we understand what it means. So if you look at what's happening between the 2 and the x cubed, they're being multiplied together. So this is actually 2 times this, right? And then once you know that, you can start writing this. So one of the first things we see is that it's a multiplication problem. So we want to use something that's a multiplication thing. So we could either use the word times or we could use the product. I'm going to use the product. So let's say the product of, and then just break it down into its parts. So its first part is 2, right? The product of 2 and... So you could say this as x cubed, you could say x to the third power, you could say a number to the third power. A lot of times they'll say a number, they won't necessarily say the name of the variable, they'll say a number, and whenever you see that, that means they're talking about whatever the variable is. So we'll just say the product of 2 and x cubed, all right? And then if you're not sure what that means, it is to the third power. That's what cubed means. All right, let's look at this next one. So we can kind of break this one down into 1/8, right? And then it's multiplied by y, right? So again, you have another product. So you could say, you know, the product of 1/8 and y, or you could say, you know, y times 1/8. You could say 1/8 if you want, but it's understanding what it is. That's the whole reason we write this stuff out, right? So I personally like the product. I like the product of, let's just say, a number and 1/8. I think that's the most elegant way of saying it for this one. All right. So 18, we've got r to the fourth power and t to the third power. So you could say this is the product again, or you could, let's use times. Let's say r to the fourth power times t to the third power. And you could also say t, instead of t to the third power, you could say t cubed would work too. All right, we got this next one, number 17. So look at the overall operation is we have a sum, right? So you could say this is the sum of, and then what are the two parts, right? Well, the first part is the product of 2 and a, all right? It's 2 times a. And the second part is 6. So let's say the sum of the product of 2 and a and 6. So reading this, you would say the sum of the product of 2 and a, so that's the product of 2 and a, so that's 2a, and then and that and goes with the sum, and 6. And if you don't like how that looks, you could simply say 2, you could say, let's try another way. The sum of 2 times a and 6. All right, so these last couple are a little more complicated, but again, break it down. So you could say, you know, the product of 6 and f squared added to, let's say, I could say the product again, but let's just say added to 5 times f. Now the problem with saying added to 5 times f is this could also sound like 6f squared plus 5 and then times f, and that's not what it is. So that's why that product thing is kind of nice, and it sort of makes it a little more clear. All right, and this last one we have here, we have a quotient because of fraction is a division problem, right? So you could say it a number of ways. You could say, 3 times a to the 5th power divided by 2. Or you could say the quotient of, and then you'd say 3 times a, to the 5th power, and then and 2. All right, so the quotient of this and that. So a number of different ways you can write these things. I think it's more important to be able to read the words and write an expression down rather than is to be able to do this. But this is kind of where we start, because in the next video we're going to talk about going the other direction.